Ohio State couldn't even get through Sunday, celebrating its national championship in the horseshoe, and then Jim Knowles decided to leave for Penn State. Didn't show up to the celebration. It is what it is. Penn State's made the news official. Jim Knowles, $3.9 million across 3 years to be the Penn State defensive coordinator, leaving the Buckeyes post less than a week after winning the national championship. I gave my thoughts on Sunday. If you haven't seen that, go to lettermenrow.com or the Lettermen Row YouTube channel. You can see my instant reaction to Jim Knowles leaving for Penn State, but news can't happen without getting the 41-year vet Tim May's opinion. He's out in Las Vegas, where it's definitely warmer, even though he's got that jacket on. It's definitely warmer than it is out here in Columbus, Ohio. But I had to bring him in, get him off of vacation time and on to Knowles time because he's going to talk about Jim Knowles. Tim, you've been doing this for a long time.
Yep.
Jim Knowles to Penn State's kind of a crazy development here, but I guess we can't say anything is surprising in college football anymore. What is your instant reaction to Jim Knowles to Penn State?
Hey, he's the hottest name, in my opinion, the hottest name in defensive coordinatorville, right? If there was a city, and there is a city like that, I'm sure a cadre of folks, but you knew people were going to be coming after him. You only get one chance to go through life, and you got to list all the offers. And then on top of that, Penn State made more sense to me than any other, Notre Dame rumor, the Oklahoma rumor, wherever rumor, because, he grew up proudly in Philadelphia, wears that on his sleeve, and a chance to be the defensive coordinator for your home state school makes a lot of sense, especially when they sweeten the pot at what, $3.2 million a year. After you get up into that area, the point whatever doesn't really matter. I'm sure Ohio State countered with an offer that had a point in it, but it is what it is in major college football. I mean, just think about it. I was reminding people of this. Might have been you and I talking last week. After the Michigan game, all the stuff that was going on about Ryan Day and his future, mostly by people who didn't have an idea what they were talking about. But it just shows you how precarious things can be in the coaching profession. Because, if you get rid of the head coach, you usually get rid of the assistant coaches too, So loyalty is sort of a one-way street to a certain extent. And I don't blame Jim Knowles at all for looking around, for people looking at Jim Knowles, who had the number one scoring defense in the country, at least when it mattered the most. And as you well know, I really like the guy because he's quirky. And I think that's the best way to describe it. I don't know how you would describe it, but, more power to it. But for him to make a move like that and to think Ohio State fans, just like when Tony Alford left to go to the team up north, as they call it, to think that people aren't going to complain or have a problem with it. I'm sure he's smart enough to understand that, even though he told us in one press conference late in the year that he never heard all the criticism. All of his friends told him about it because he never paid attention to what was going on. So maybe this is a good time for him not to pay attention to anything going on in the social media circles around Ohio State. With that said, as much as I like Tony Alford, I thought they upgraded at the running back coaching position after Tony Alford left for Michigan, bringing in Carlos Lockman. And we'll see if Ohio State can do the same thing in whatever form they take to replace Jim Knowles. I mean, I think there are a couple capable guys already on the staff. I mean, Matt Guerreri, I think is a youngish guy, but he's been around, a lot. He studied under Jim Knowles for 4, 5, 6 years now, whatever the number is. He's considered to be a sharp cookie. Even Ryan Day gave him a shout out at the national championship celebration. And then, of course, Tim Walton. Tim Walton's been a defensive coordinator, I think, for 3 different teams in the National Football League. So he's quite capable of being that guy. And in some respects, I mean, with the videos he put on and certain things, a lot of people know more about him now than they did maybe a couple of years ago. Tim Walton, an Ohio State alum, a guy I used to cover as a player and now as a coach, I think he's quite capable. And that's just before you start looking outside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. So, like you and I were talking about, it might be more settling if Ryan Day does go and hire a coordinator from outside, it's kind of the taffy in the taffy pool here. But but going back to what we were just talking about, Jim Knowles is extremely talented. He finally got the entire act together this year with the pieces he needed, and that means the players and then the scheme coming together, especially after the Oregon game. There's been speculation that he and Ryan Day definitely had a meeting of the minds after the Oregon game. Whether that would lead to sour grapes or whatever that finally festered after a national championship season, that's kind of hard for me to believe because everybody works for somebody, right? And but clearly the defense played so much better after the Oregon game. It was uncanny, really, and Jim Knowles deserves so much credit for that, but so do the other guys on his staff and on the defensive staff. So, Ryan Day has learned to roll with the punches. He brought Jeff Hafley in 2019. Wow, did he make an instant impact? And then boom, Boston College hired him away as their head coach. He brings Chip Kelly in this year, and boom, does he make an impact, in my opinion, with the exception of one game. One game he and Ryan Day would like to have back. But that's the way it goes in assistant coaches world, man. I mean, you're always looking to improve yourself. I mean, Ryan Day said that, after the national championship game, he wasn't going to be surprised by different things happening because he wants these guys, just like he was one time on that track, to improve himself. And like we talked about earlier, it's funny, I was listening to Rick Neuheisel on his daily Sirius XM show, losing track of where I am and what I'm doing, but it was last week, obviously, and said he had been in the one of the hotels there in Atlanta the morning after the game, and there was Trace Armstrong huddled with Ross Bjork. Trace Armstrong, the agent for Ryan Day, huddled with Ross Bjork, the athletic director from Ohio State, at a table all by themselves in a restaurant of a hotel. And so you know what they were talking about. So everybody's trying to get a little bit of something in the post national championship world.
Yeah. You just talked for 7 minutes here, so I'm trying to figure out which way I'm going to go with this. Yeah.
Well, it seemed like 6.5.
Here's a couple things. November 1st is going to be very fun, right? Jim Knowles returned to Ohio Stadium. I'm sure he will be met with a chorus of cheers and glad handing from everyone involved to the 100,000 in Ohio Stadium for that November 1st clash. It'll probably be a noon game on Fox if I had to guess. The other thing, Tim, like you said, Guerreri has been a defensive coordinator before, a co-DC at Indiana. He ran the defense at Duke for a little while after Jim Knowles left. Now, that was a very unsuccessful Duke defense, but also he was working with Duke players, and I think he's learned a lot from Jim Knowles in the time since then. The 2022 stint at Ohio State, leaves to go to Indiana, learns under Tom Allen, comes back to Ohio State this year, learns a lot under Jim Knowles. So Guerreri there, like you said, a candidate for sure. Tim Walton was the defensive coordinator at Miami, Florida in 2007. He was the defensive coordinator at Memphis, in 2008. And He was the defensive coordinator for the St. Louis Rams in 2013. So, like, he has experience running defenses.
Yes.
Now, whether those were successful defenses, I haven't looked at the numbers. I would assume with 1 year stints like that, they weren't particularly great, but that doesn't mean that they can't be good at Ohio State. He's working with, clearly he'll have the talent advantage every time they step on the field. So those two internal candidates are names to watch. There are other names as well. There's a hot board out at lettermenrow.com. Not really much of an update yet. The Buckeyes are hitting the road for the recruiting trail this week. I don't expect there to be a ton of updates in the coming days unless something happens pretty rapidly that Ohio State has to deal with. So it's just a matter of like the timeline for Ohio State, how they want to work with this, how they want to go about things, whether they want to wait until you get back from Las Vegas to make any announcements on a defensive coordinator. We don't really know. But I said this on the Letterman Lounge message board, and I think you'll agree with me, Tim. You've been around for a long time. Ohio State's had top 5, top 10 defenses throughout history, and every time they do, they seem to replace the defensive coordinator, and they're fine. Are they going to get a better defensive coordinator than Jim Knowles? I absolutely think no. I'll just be honest. Like, no matter what they do, I think it's probably going to be a downgrade because Knowles is so good at what he does. Penn State got an absolute home run hire in Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. We can't hide from that. And Ohio State fans, you shouldn't hide from that. Knowles is so good at what he does. You can be mad at him, but you can also know that he is the best in the business when it comes to defense.
Thorough.
But that doesn't mean that Ohio State won't hire a good defensive coordinator who keeps this defense elevated. Now, Ryan Day is 2 for 3 in defensive coordinator hires. He hired Jeff Hafley. That worked out really well. He hired Kerry Combs, and the man got demoted after 10 games. He hired Jim Knowles, and they won a national championship. So he's 2 for 3. Can he get to 3 for 4? I think that's the biggest thing here is like, Ryan, you got to get to 3 for 4 because if you do, you're going to be successful. If you don't, it's going to be tough sledding for the next couple of years. So you find the next guy.
And the other thing, like I said, you know how I feel about Jim Knowles. 2022 wasn't that great a season, No. The pieces were still being put together. They blow the lead against Georgia in the fourth quarter and don't win a national championship. Yeah, you're right. A forklift just came in behind me. That's why I switched to the other side of the tree. I don't know what's going on here in Las Vegas, except everything's building. Also with Jim Knowles, gosh, sounds like a truck fell over. Facing with Jim Knowles also. Obviously, his best years as defensive coordinator at Ohio State happened to come with one of the great returns of personnel to a program you've ever seen in the NIL era for sure. It was short-lived, the transfer portal era, and then you get the infusion of like a Caleb Downs. Are you kidding me? So, yes, Jim Knowles is talented, but he coached this year a very talented defense. And there's something to be said for getting out of town, at exactly the right time. Timing is everything. If you go back and look at Tim Walton's defensive coordinator situation, like you talked about in the National Football League, the timing there was awful almost all 3 times. And but it is what it is. It's on his permanent record now. But that doesn't mean he's not a talented defensive coordinator. That doesn't mean he and or Guerreri couldn't pick up where Jim Knowles left off because they definitely know the system now. But you and I both know this is going to be a defense that's going to have to prove itself as the season goes on this coming year because they're losing so many key, big-time, seasoned veteran players. And that's why I'm reluctant to be putting Ohio State in the top 2 like some people are already for the preseason for 2025 because, there's a lot of big-time players being replaced on both sides of the ball. But with that said, I think Ryan has matured more and more as a hiring head coach, and that makes a big difference in who you go after. The hardest thing for a new head coach to do is learn how to hire and fire and or shift and or demote. And I think Ryan has become astute at that, just like this forklift operator behind me is still learning how to stack things, obviously. But Ryan, I think, has become astute and learning on the job, for want of another term, of who to go after. He has deep pockets when it comes to going after somebody. We know that now, right? And from what they probably counteroffered with Jim Knowles. So, they could get the best guy they want. They just got to go find him.
Deep pockets and a defense to work with. It's going to be enticing for whoever. I'm going to let Tim get out of here because we're playing through adversity here.
No, we were doing really good there. Look, that guy showed up and started making a lot of noise. Hey, let me ask you this though, because you're still back there while I'm sitting there having a good time. I had planned this for a little while. I couldn't obviously. Had a bunch of buddies involved going to the Eagles concert and at the Sphere and things like that. But what is the sense of the moving on aspect of this team? You understand what I'm saying? Because you're losing your starting quarterback, you're losing your 2 running backs, right? You're losing 2 tackles. Right on down the line. Is there a sense that Ryan will get a little bit of a buffer from this?
I think that it was noteworthy that he ended his celebration thing with the there's two ways to see it, Tim. Like, I saw Philip Daniels and Ethan Anyanwa, the two projected tackles for next year, sitting in the championship crowd.
Right.
So, like, they're already – Max Clare was there. Like, Devin Sanchez was there. They're already kind of moving on, in a sense. Ryan Day said in his press conference, his final remark was, let's go get another one of these. So, like,
Yeah.
they are moving on in a sense, but they also understand that, like, hey, you got to celebrate this thing. It's a national championship. But they're on the recruiting trail now. They're starting to piece together everything for spring ball and get those plans in order for 2025. Like, it's a pretty quickly moving machine here.
It has to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's college football in 2025. I am going to let you get out of here, Tim.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you back
One
on
of the
vacation.
quick things, I think people understand Ohio State is working for 3 weeks behind, in a lot of areas. And that includes hiring a new coordinator, defensive coordinator. With that said, they hired Bill O'Brien. He left for Boston College. They hired Chip Kelly in the middle of February. Saw where they took him. So, there is light at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with Chip Kelly because he's in some different rumor circles with the NFL as well. So, Ohio State, there's some turnover going on. Players, coaches, things like that. Jim Knowles off to Penn State. I had to get Tim May, the 41-year vet's thoughts, even though he's out in sunny Las Vegas. I'm going to let you go, Tim. Get back to your vacation time. We'll see you back in Columbus. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys over at LettermenRow.com. Tim's going to go scold a forklift operator.
You think I'm kidding? I definitely am.
And we're gonna get back here in Columbus, Ohio. Go to LettermenRow.com right now. Seven days, $1. Your first 7 days is just $1. Go to LettermenRow.com right now. We'll see you guys over there. We'll get Tim back to Columbus safely.